Hi guys, this is Maker of Beauty, working on a template 21 today. But before I start putting the template together, I wanted to talk a little bit about how I organize my work. I posted pictures today of a beautiful wedding backdrop that I did for my co-worker, and people had a lot of questions about the how-tos. So it's very important to figure out a process that works for you before you take on any major project, whether it's for somebody else or for yourself. So one of the ways I keep everything in place is when I cut my petals for the backdrop, I put each petal together, and I just use this clips to hold it together. And normally what I would do, I would have like a piece of paper, right? I'm just gonna grab something. Let me get all of my tools. So I would also cut out a small piece, and I would write out which template it is. Give me 1 minute to get all of my tools together. Okay, I got my pen, and so I would write out the name of my template, and I just stack it up this way. What that does for me is that, if I have like 30 some flowers, it just helps me to remember what I already cut out, and it makes it easy for me to correlate my actual cutouts against the sheet of paper that would be actually my starting point, where I write out all of the templates that I'm planning to use. Because what happens is that I'll have the same template for backdrop, cut it out like 3 times, and if it's in a different color, I would even like write the color, just so that before I start making flowers, I count everything to make sure that I have all my inventory together. So that's just something that I wanted to start off with. And now, without any further ado, I'm gonna get going with my template 21. I find this one to be pretty versatile. I actually have tried to make this template using the the shapes in a design space, and I was able to get the edges right, but I wasn't able to get this grove, as smooth as you can do with a pen tool and a graphic design. So I've tried for a very long time, but it's just, I could never get the grove to be round. It would always come up under like a sharp angle. So I gave it a good try, but it is what it is. So for this one I did, here's my large one, here's my medium, and if I overlay it right on the top of each other, like you can see, they're being reduced by 1/2 inch, which is my preferred reduction for most of the flowers. And the very first petal is about 6 inches, I believe. So I'm just trying to find my measuring tape. Let's see, I have to remember where I put it. Found my measuring tape. So let's see my height, and it is 6 inches. Okay. At some point, right, you get to be quite good at seeing the size. When I started off, I couldn't tell like 3 inches from 4 inches to 5 inches at all. Anyways, the first thing we're gonna do is, of course, I'm gonna check my slit, right? And it's not bad, but I'm still going to increase it just a little bit, just so that I have a little bit more control over, how flat I want to make this petal. Because, with this one, if I wanted to make it flat like this, right, I have very little real estate space for my glue. It's just not enough overlap. It would force it, for me to do it like almost on the edge, and that's guaranteed to burn my fingers. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my slit. And for all of my flowers, you know, I typically set my slit to 2 inches. I'm actually going to measure it right now to show you that it is indeed 2 inches. Actually, this one is even a little bit more. Is that the... Okay, it's 2.5. Not close enough. You know, normally 2 inches is a good starting point. It already puts it for me in the middle. It has the slit going, and then if I need to adjust it, it's pretty easy adjustment. So I'm gonna cut all of them at once. Okay. Now with the this petal, there are several different ways to how you can curl it. You can curl it the way I had shown in my template 6, where one side comes up and the other side goes down, and you just do the alternating sides on your subsequent petals. But my favorite one is actually have both of them curled up and do that throughout all of the layers, and it gives it a very nice fluffy look. So without further ado, I'm gonna get 3 of my petals, and I'm going to have them curled up. And so just remember, if you watched my template 6, you know, my advice to not tuck it in right away, but rather give it a nice curl first, and then to tuck it in more if you need to. Notice how I don't curl in just on the top, but I'm also, you know, like moving this tool around and trying to get the sides. I'm a big believer in curling the flowers. I just don't think the flat flowers look nice, but the curls gives you so much more diversity, if you will. So that's the look I'm going for. Now I'm going to do the same thing with remaining petals. I'm going to start in an angle and then slowly move up and just curl it back and forth. And the same thing on this one. Okay, I'm gonna set this aside. My large side is done. I'm gonna move on to my medium size. Now with this petal, you know, you can still do the large twice and treat it as a medium size. It's definitely not the type of a petal that could not allow you to get away with it. But you certainly don't have to. So let me finish curling my medium size, and then I'm gonna move on to my small size. Okay, so I have all my petals curled up. As you can see, all of them go straight up. And now it's time to get my trusted cheap hot glue gun and start gluing. One thing that I wanted to mention, and I probably should have done that even in my earlier videos, is that when you start gluing, right, whatever overlap you end up doing, just try to be consistent. And the reason to that is that, you know, if your overlap is drastically different, that does affect your petal. And so all of a sudden, you know, if you overlap a little bit on one petal of the same size, and then you do a much bigger overlap on the other one, like I'll show it to you, like say this is what you know, this is what I have, and then all of a sudden I'm doing it like this. That's, you know, very different. Like it lifted up differently, you know, it's different look. So trying to be as even as possible is the way to go. Okay, so I have all my petals curled up, glued on, large, medium, small, everything is here, and now we're ready to start assembling. So here's a bunch of my centers. You know, all of them are, let's see, let me grab the measurement tape. They are roughly the same. Yep, they're all 6 inches. So that looks pretty good. I could have gone for like 7 inch, and normally, if you're just starting out, definitely think you should do an additional 1 inch, but I'm going to work with what I have. And this time I'm actually going to select the, I think it's a 𝐒𝐭𝐤, right? Hold up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, that's not gonna work for me. Okay, never mind, guys. I don't have the 6 size. I have more, so it's gonna be back to using a circle for me. Can never go wrong with a circle, at least for me. So actually, before I glued it on, I want to talk about something about how you can use the same petal but give it a different look, right? So I know that I tend to make my petals fairly skinny on towards the end, and the reason to that is that I don't really like the petals overlap this so much, right? And so although in this case it might. But one of the ways, for example, that you could do is, you don't have to start it off by gluing it at a circle. You actually could start it off by gluing like, petal over each other and complete the circle this way. And then you would put the circle, like right in the middle. This petal is not the best to do it with because will make it a very squishy flower, and probably there would not be enough space for the small size. Like I can see that already. Once I would have that circle, I would only have enough space to put it in my medium size and call it a day. But just because I have preference to going for specific look, and I leave space between the petals for my large layer, if you're someone who likes fuller flower and you don't want as much of the open look, all you have to do is just add a couple of additional petals, right? Instead of a 6, do 8 or even do 7. Like with some of the flowers, it's best if you have the even number, but you don't have to. Don't limit yourself to only doing the directions you've seen in the tutorial. It's a good starting point, when you see somebody walk the whole process from A to Z and you can see the end result. But once you have done a few things on your own, give yourself an opportunity and a permission to experiment. Now that I'm done with my spiel, I'll go back to starting to layering my flowers. And so because it's only 6 inches, I am pushing it pretty far out. If I had the 7 inch, I would probably make it a little bit closer, but I have experience, I'm confident, I'm comfortable with what I'm doing, and so this is good. By the way, this is a 𝐒𝐿 tool that comes as a part of the basic 𝐒𝐿 tool set. And you're supposed to use it for cleaning your mat, but I find all kind of uses for it. Besides cleaning the mat, I use it for when I work with vinyl, to press it down really hard. Okay. So this is what I mean by saying that I like to leave the gap between my petals, but you can rectify that by cutting out more petals, and here you have it, right? Like if you just go a little bit more out and definitely tuck the petals under each other, like that would give you a completely different look. And so if you're somebody who likes full from the very get-go, just do that, cut out more petals. You don't have to be married to one way of doing things. So the reason I'm using this tool right now is to spread my glue, and the reason to that, right, is I want my glue to spread, to give the sturdiness to my flower. And the reason I need that is because I have 6 inches where really I should have ideally 7-inch base to have the more real estate space. And so I'm trying to ensure that my glue had spread underneath the bottom and it's holding it on as tightly as possible. And by the way, when I'm doing this right now, I'm pressing down pretty hard. Okay. And you know, if you are a newcomer to the world of making paper flowers, right, take your time. Like, I mean, I didn't really measure it or anything when I started to glue it on, but originally, you know, when I started out, I would like literally flip over the side and I would just sort of like drag this petal out to know that this is where I needed to go. Now I don't need to do that, but that's because my eye is trained. You know, I can literally like see it, sort of like when you go to a doctor, right? And to an untrained eye, my cough sounds, I don't know, like bronchitis. But, you know, they'll listen to you and they'll know like it's not bronchitis, but something else. It's kind of a, if you have experience, it's a completely different ball game for you. Okay, so my large is done, and you know, because I pretty much had glued my bag pretty nicely, right, by using this tool to spread it. It's not super floppy. I still might have to secure it by putting in a bit more of a glue underneath of my petals as I finish putting them in, but I don't know at this point just yet. And so continuing on with my medium size, and that goes right between my 2 of my large petals, and you're just continuing on with the rest, doing the exactly same thing. And as you can see, right, just by looking at this, you could absolutely not bother with printing it out. The medium was, you didn't have to bother with setting this petal to medium size. You could have totally done large twice, and it would still be just fine. The only thing, you know, you would have to do is just bring it a little bit lower so it would not be the same height, to give that visual look of, you know, reduction. And notice, guys, that I still did not needed to leave one side of my petal unglued, so I would, you know, tuck the petal in, because I know that I will not be overlapping. Okay, I glued this one a little bit too far out. Like you can see that it's a little bit closer, but, and I am actually going to unglue it and re-glue it. And so what I'm going to do is just carefully go under. I have mentioned in one of my tutorials that the cardstock paper is pretty forgiving, and this is a good example to show you that yes, indeed, it is forgiving. I will be able to cover this imperfection, and it's still going to be a gorgeous petal, and it's going to hold out just fine. As a matter of fact, I had a class one time, and one of the gals did such a number on a rose. It was like, you know, I wanted to cry. She made him look so flat, and you know, I mean, she was disappointed. We had to do another rose, but I couldn't bring myself to get rid of it because the paper was so expensive. I needed the glue stick. And after she left, I ended up deconstructing the whole flower, redoing it, and that beautiful silver shimmery rose is now a beautiful decoration in my living room. Okay, here's my last petal. And lo and behold, I did not to tuck anything in. But now, as my real estate space is enclosing, I might have to tuck in the very last petal. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a dab of a glue on just this side, but I'm gonna leave this one empty, unglued for now, right? Just so that if I need to tuck it in, I'll tuck it in to give it that very nice look. And again, the small size is going now between the two mediums. It's basically like in the same direction as a large petal. Oh, I said I'm not going to glue it in on both sides, and totally forgot, and I did just that, which happens. So I just set that one aside. I'm gonna put this one in with the glue on just one side. I'm gonna go back into this one. I'm gonna reapply more glue to it. Okay, now I'm not gonna be able to use that, what I call squeegee. I'm just gonna use this. And the reason to that, you know, it's just a little too hard for me to get in. That gives me a little bit more of a control right now. I absolutely love this petal. It's just so versatile, and you can do so much with it. And it just, you know, I mean, even if you were to curl it. Okay, with my last petal, it's gonna have to be tucked in. It's like this, and that's why I left the one side unglued, because if you were to tape it this way, I mean, it still looks pretty, but I just think that, you know, when you tuck it in, it just had a much more polished look to it, and I'm a stickler for details. I'm gonna put my glue, carefully slide that in, adjust it if I need it, and glue it in. So from my calculations, right, let's calculate the full size of the flower. The petal on each side is 6 inches long, and then the base is 6 inches, right? And we're gonna take 2 inches away for the real estate space where we had to put the large petal when we started to glue it on, right? This is what I mean. When we glued it on in here, you know, it took about like inch or so and an inch and so from here. So 6 inches reduced by 2 to maybe 3 inches. So let's just say it's 3 inches. 6 inches, 3 inches for base, now 9, 6 inches, 15. So I'm gonna take my measuring tape and see what it tells me. And lo and behold, I have my 15 inches. There's my 15 inches flower. And that's what, you know, that's how you should be calculating when you're trying to figure out your flower. This is assuming that you guys doing the base, right? If you were working with a petal that did not have a base and you were layering it on, like, you know, petal on the top of each other, then obviously your calculation would get, you know, completely different. But when you have a petal and a base, that's how your calculation goes. You know, double the size of the petal, because you're gonna have petal on each side, plus your base minus 3 to 4 inches. I mean, if I had a 7-inch base, right, I would still probably ended up with the 15-inch flower. You know, with a 7-inch petal, it would just give me a little bit more real estate space to glue my petal in for the sturdiness. So if you wanted to have an even bigger one, right, then you want to do more than just adjusting the size of the base, right? Where you have a 6-inch petal, don't like do 10-inch base and hope that you will gain your size that way. Don't skim on petals. The reason to that, if you have a 10-inch base, right, then your petals would be really far away from each other. And with some of the petals, you know, you could definitely get away with it. Like I have this one petal, it's very fluffy. I mean, you can like curl up in so many different ways, and you could have a lot of gap in between and it would still look very good, right? But with some other petals, it would just look very skinny. And I don't think that's necessarily a good look. Okay, now I'm gonna move on to doing a center for this. So here are all of my cutouts for the centers. I'm going to make one. And I wanted to share something a little bit more on the centers. I've actually tried to sort of keep a track of how I was doing the centers, but it got a little bit too much for me, you know, because honestly I couldn't always like remember how I did it previously. So I found that winging it was the best way for me. Like I've looked at different ways of how to do it, and I was like, yeah, you know, I'm just going to remember a couple of them and I'm going to do it as I go and see what happens. And so far it's turned quite well. You know, I can't say that, you know, I can't complain. So I don't have like a particular style of how I do centers, you know, because I would literally have to like record the video even for myself and try to remember what I did before, like all the exact steps. And it proved to be a little bit too much. And I also found that like, you know, the way I do the backdrops, many times I actually don't require to have it, my centers, you know, like don't need to be exactly matching up. As a matter of fact, you know, like I find it that I like symmetry, but I don't necessarily like the symmetry of a completely identical flowers and just different shapes. I like symmetry of more of a size, and but you know, like different colors and for certain different different centers. Anyways, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to have 2 pieces of a French cutout to glue together, and I'm going to just wing it and see what happens. And like I said, you know, most likely I will not mess it up. So if you just guys, you know, stick with me. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give it all one straight line. I basically aligned it, you know, each side to each other. Try to keep it as much in the middle as possible and just, you know, get it all the way up. I was originally looking for my knife, but I can't find it, and so it's fine. I will work with squidgy, and it's gonna be just fine. Okay. So if you watched my template 6, let me straighten this out. I had one of the fringes bent on the wrong angle. And so I'm just gonna leave it like that. So because it's all staying put in one place, I'm just gonna add the glue, fold it one side to the next, and I'm gonna go over that with my tool just to make sure that my glue stuck. Any case, if you remember from my template 6, right, when I was rolling my center, I did it on this tool, and as a result of it, I ended up having, you know, like a hole that I had to fill it in with a pearl, or at least, you know, that's what I went with. So this time I don't really want to, you know, have a hole, and so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find my tweezers. I'm gonna use the tweezers to roll it in. I could also use fingers probably. Okay, here's my tweezers. So I'm just gonna hold it in and start my curl. Just really need to get going, and then I'm going to put the glue in. Okay, that almost. Okay, so I'm just gonna give it a little bit of a dab, but just need to keep it in one place. And I'm really not worried about, you know, like putting so much glue. Am I gluing it the right way? Oops. Okay, hold on, guys. I actually want to glue it the opposite direction. The reason is to that is because I don't want this to open up. I actually want my center to stay closed in. So I need to curl this way. Yep, okay, that's the right direction. Do you guys see why it would be like so difficult for me to remember or give directions on the centers? I would literally have to watch my own videos to remember what is it that I was did, you know, like the last time. That's why I don't limit myself. Okay, so curling, try to give it as tight as a tuck here as possible, but not too tight, right? Because you don't want to break your paper. And remember, you don't have to put the glue along the entire length, just, you know, a little bit here and there, and it will hold, because when you will be adhering the center to the flower, you're gonna glue it pretty nicely. Like that's where your holding glue comes into place. Okay, so that's done. I am gonna put a little bit of a glue right here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is take this one. This one, I am not going to have that straight line. I'm gonna leave it pretty fluffy, because what I wanted to do, I want the fluffiness, right, like to go around my tight center. And if I wanted to make it thicker, you know, I definitely could, but like this is pretty good for me. So I'm just gonna give this a little bit of a glue to start holding it in place, just so that it catches and adheres. I'm going to straighten out the fringes, and I'm just going to go to this angle. So somebody asked me why I don't have a YouTube channel, why am I using the Vimeo services. It's much more professional. I find that the YouTube is quite distasteful to my liking these days. It definitely has a, you know, a great deal of a good information, but I'm completely turned off. I also have removed it from a lot of my own devices, because I don't want my kids to accidentally go on a YouTube, because they do all kind of inappropriate videos where it's so difficult to differentiate between like a quality stuff, you know, versus not. But also what scares me is that, you know, my kids could start off with an approved video by me and then select something that's completely not appropriate. So I'm not interested in that. So one of the ways to like break a thread, if you have like a bit of a glue bunched up and make it easier for yourself to curl it up, is just give it a tug. Like you don't need to do it where you don't have a glue. It's more of a like, you know, where you do have the glue. Okay, so this is just going to be curled right around this center. So I'm gonna take it and adhere it right here, and I'm just gonna start rolling around it. And again, even with this one, you don't need to put the glue you know, throughout the entire line. Just a little bit here and there will be quite sufficient, because it just, you know, if you put too much of a glue on the centers, they become so much harder to work with. I don't like that. Okay, so I'm just gonna put my finger in here, sort of try to keep it in one place so it doesn't get completely out of control. And I'm just gonna keep on rolling as tightly as possible. I'm gonna keep, lift this up. I remember I was watching this video, and I think it was by the Sydney paper flower, and she had this technique where she starts in the middle, right? And I thought, oh, it's so awesome, you know, but I've tried it and I've tried it and it just wasn't working for me. So after a while, it's just like, ah, forget it, you know, I'm gonna stick to what like works for me. So I have to adjust this because this was like popping out a little bit, and now I'm gonna give it a little bit more of a glue to make sure that it really stays put. And I'm gonna finish up rolling it. And I'm just gonna hold it in place. Okay, and now I'm just gonna use my fingers to adjust the fluffy stuff and try to open it up, you know, and open each fringe out so it gives me a fluffier look, and you know, like not to have like each fringe touching each other the way I have it right now. Like you can see it, like they need to be separated. And part of it, the reason, you know, it has that is because, you know, my lines right next to each other are pretty close. If I had like an even thinner fringes cut out, it would be a completely different story there too. I actually do have a couple of flowers, right? Like when it's super thin and it's very fluffy and it's beautiful. I mean, you have a big center like that, you can actually get away with like having 2 layers of the petals because your center will be fluffy and it's going to take a lot of real estate space. But you can guys see it, right? Like what I'm doing, I'm literally opening up every one of them, and I would do it with both hands, but right now this hand is still staying on my bottom, but okay. Now that it kind of glued on, I can move a little bit faster and just separate every single one of them. And I guess I would call it like, you know, open my center as much as I can. Okay. So if you happen to know my Facebook page, the Maker of a Beauty, and if you have any questions, you know, feel free, just post them to me either as a question directly to my page, because I allow people like post on it, or just email it to me, and I will be happy to try to answer questions in the tutorial, because you know, sometimes I kind of feel that I'm just talking a little bit all over the map. So, you know, with the center, you could leave it just the way it is, right? Or if you wanted to give it more of a, like if you're working with a very large flower, right, and you need have more real estate space to cover with a center, like then one way to enlarge this flower would be completely flatten this out, right? And then you would also probably flatten this out as well to give it a bit more of a like flat look. So you know, you would just put your finger you know, roughly in the middle and start working slowly your petals, I'm sorry, not the petals but the fringes, towards the bottom, like the way I'm doing it right now. But you know, for this flower, I think that's pretty good. I wouldn't actually mind making a little bit, a tiny bit flatter, but not too much. So I'm gonna do that right now. So you know, you just want to press it down at the base, and first I'm going to do that to my fluffy, and then I'll see what I want to do with my skinny ones. Yeah, I think I'm definitely going to press this one down just to open this up a little bit more too. Okay, but not too much. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop while I'm in a good place, because sometimes, you know, guys, I get like a little too excited about things, and the next thing I know, I deviate so much from where I started. It's like, huh, how did I ended up here? You know, I'm like, I'm not even sure. But this looks lovely to me. Just gonna separate a little bit more, fluff it up. And I don't know if you guys can see it, but you know, like there is definitely like a rhyme and a seam to how I like my flowers. And I think like that's true for anybody who gets in like serious about it. You kind of, you know, like develop your own style. And then you match up your templates to accommodate your style and preferences. Okay, so I'm going to press this down. Now with this one, I need my trusted chopstick, because I would not be able to press it down with this, since it would not hold it in a place without destroying the middle. And the chopstick is a much better option because it's thinner. But just still be careful with your petals. Make sure that, you know, you're not pressing it down so hard and you're pulling them down and destroying them. Just go sort of like, you know, go from the side and push it down. Sometimes what I'll do, I'll still go in like with my finger, you know, just to like hold it in a place. Another option is like, you know, you can like lift this up and press it from here, sort of how I'm doing it right now, just so that it adheres to one place. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press on the fringes at the base, because I do want them to be glued in a little bit more on the bottom. And part of it is like, you know, to cover. And part of it that if you have more paper glued in, then the flower is going to be so much sturdier. And again, right, you want to be very careful, just sort of like get in there, right there at the base, and gently press it down. You really want to be pressing down at the tip of your fingers and not like along your entire finger, because you don't want to destroy your fringes. Okay, and there is our template 21. I'm gonna take a picture, post it on a Facebook, and I will upload the template with the SVG file along with PDF. I do PDF for all of my petals, with an exception of the one that have been designed by using shapes in a design space, and my lace petals. I haven't gotten to those yet, but I definitely have them. And the reason to that is because you know, the ones in a design space, there is no reason to extract them out for me, because, you know, the whole idea is that you get a tutorial and you design a petal, and it's already in design space place for you right there. And the PDFs, you know, I don't cut out my own petals, even for the large flowers. Like all of this is cut with a Cricut, but everybody's different. You know, some people don't have the machines, you know, but they still like the flowers, and some people actually prefer to cut by hand, because, you know, that saves them time. I feel that with my process, you know, using Cricut would saves me time, but everyone is different, so to each its own. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I hope you enjoyed it. You've learned something new, and you'll consider watching my next video. Thank you. Take care.